Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Top 5 to Stay Alive for June 2020. It's being passed around from person to person, reaching millions of Americans from coast to coast. And I'm not talking about the coronavirus. It's the claptrap misinformation, disinformation, outright lies floating around about the infection. And much like the COVID 19 itself, the misunderstandings and mistruths are spreading rapidly through communities. It's time to wipe out this other infection fast. So I'm here today to set the record straight with the inside scoop on some of the biggest myths and mistakes in circulation right now. Number one, mask about face. Come on, you knew they were lying about this from day one when they claimed masks won't help and told people to stop buying them. They later had to beg for masks, the ones they said didn't work. Now they've done a complete exorcist level head spinning turnaround on this, saying everyone should wear some kind of face protection, but they want people to use shirts and dish rags or whatever, and not the N95 and surgical masks that are in short supply. Truth is, N95 masks can protect you, but only when worn properly. If it makes you feel good to wear a plain old mask instead, I'm not going to stand in your way. But the question has to be asked, if they've been lying about masks, what else have they been hiding from us? By the way, breathing in carbon dioxide all day long from that mask is not a good thing either. Number two, no treatment. They keep saying there's zero treatment for COVID 19, but while there's no official treatment, experts are testing multiple therapeutics, some of which actually show promise. Even mainstream doctors, including those at Northwell Health Hospitals in New York, have seen encouraging results from intravenous vitamin C, which doctors also use with some success in China. Number three, shelter in place. Now, I'm not saying it's time to go to the movies or the mall right now. Not that any of them are actually open, of course. Of course, you should keep your distance from crowds, but I'd say the same thing to some people at any time, depending on their age and their general level of health. That doesn't mean you need to lock the doors, shut the blinds, and cover in the dark basement. Not only will that stress you out, also bad for your health, but you won't get the sun needed for the vitamin D that can arm your immune system. So find a way to safely step outside and soak up some sun every afternoon. It's summertime. Don't deprive yourself or your body of this incredible weather. Summertime means dancing in the streets. And I don't mean looting. Number four, prepare for the worst. COVID 19 is mild infection 80% of the time. The other 20% you might feel a little miserable, and there's a high death rate in folks who are some combination of older and sicker to begin with, but this is not the doomsday germs the media makes it out to be. The simple act of washing your hands with soap and water is enough to protect you. What does that tell you? Taking vitamins and the immune boosting supplements can help you too. So will the following conventional food safety rules when you're cooking at home or ordering takeout. Because the last thing you want right now is to get sick from anything that's serious enough to send you to a germy hospital. Let's move on to topic number two. I don't know what it'll take to get people off the aspirin wagon. There have been warnings, but the warnings were poo-pooed. There have been studies, but the studies were ignored. And there are about a gazillion people who can tell you firsthand about the toll this drug takes on the gut, ripping up the walls like you swallowed a tiny angry tiger. Yet, right now, at this very moment, just about half of all seniors are still taking aspirin every day. It's sheer insanity, if you ask me. And the latest case report reveals yet one more reason to heed the warning, listen to the studies, and pay attention to the victims, because it shows a frightening risk, one that your own doctor might not be able to properly diagnose. It looks like a stroke. It looks so much like a stroke, they might think that what's actually happening. They might even treat you for a stroke when you turn up with one of the symptoms, especially the one that just screams stroke, near paralysis on one side of the body. The case report notes a woman who woke up with extreme weakness in her arms and legs. In the ER, She burst into fits of laughter, all at the wrong time, spoke of masked angels saving her from a fall, and reported blurred vision, shortness of breath, and more during her disorganized, wandering answers. Most doctors see that and they think stroke. Gotta be a stroke. Except it's not a stroke. Not in this case, anyway, as the brain scan turned up nothing new in there. As you probably guessed it by now, it was aspirin. Now, this lady wasn't taking the baby aspirin the older folks take for heart health. She was taking it for pain, 325 milligrams every 2 hours while awake. Too much? Sure, but it ain't exactly an overdose either. That's about 8 doses and a total of 2,600 milligrams per day. Well, below the supposed upper limit of 4,000 milligrams per day. Yet she managed to suffer from salicylic toxicity, better known as too much aspirin. I bet this happens a lot more than people are willing to admit, especially when you consider some people take a dose for heart health and then some more for pain. Some people can take more still without realizing the aspirin is secretly tucked away in other products like Alka-Seltzer. Plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a mistake it is. For pain, take something else, anything else. Ideally, you'd go for natural options like my Flex, which has 5 anti-inflammatories, or my topical formula built around back and muscle pain like Thermomax. And if you're worried about your heart risk, for God's sake, avoid the aspirin. Studies show it's far more likely to cause a dangerous internal bleeds than cut your risk of a first heart attack. Stick to common sense stuff for your heart health like CardioForLIfe. Topic number 3. It's a kind of thing where I have to laugh, if only stop myself from screaming. I've seen them yammer on about it on TV, and they've slipped it into news articles too. It's even on the New York Times webpage about protecting yourself from the deadly coronavirus. Get a flu shot. They know it won't do a thing for coronavirus. How could it? But they say there are 2 reasons to get it anyway. It'll stop the flu. Flu symptoms can be similar to coronavirus. You're scared, you'll scare yourself half to death if you get it, and you'll probably haul yourself to the doctor's office or hospital where you could get the actual coronavirus from an infected patient. Number 2, hey, it can hurt. Well, here's what I say, wrong on both counts. This common piece of mainstream advice is pretty close to made up because these experts know they've got nothing new to say. They take the useful stuff like wash your hands, stop touching your face, and then mix in a little get your exercise and eat your greens because it sounds good. And since the camera's still rolling, they'll toss in the flu shot for a good measure. But following that advice could be a huge and fatal mistake. First, the flu shot isn't exactly very good at helping anyone to avoid the flu in any year, let alone this one. In fact, it's totally crummy way of avoiding the flu and won't even come close to preventing it completely. And second, the can't hurt you part could be totally off base when it comes to the coronavirus. A study last year looked at the phenomenon called virus interference, specifically when a vaccine for one virus interferes with your immune system's ability to fight off other viruses. At the time, the mainstream was able to tout the study as good news. Overall, the influenza vaccine didn't lead to increased interference, except they found a couple exceptions. Vaccine-derived virus interference was significantly associated with coronavirus and human metapneumovirus. Does that sound good to you? Me neither. That may not have seemed like a big deal at the time because last year most people outside of medicine had never heard of any coronavirus, even if we'd already fought the first 18 strains of them off. Now, of course, this is just one study, and it didn't look specifically at the coronavirus that causes COVID-19. So we have to label this as a cause for concern and not the rock-solid evidence. But I've got enough concern that I'd avoid the flu shot, like all the crap that they put in those vaccines and flu shots. Then again, I avoid it anyway, and even if I didn't, the last place in the world I want to be right now is in a pharmacy or medical clinic surrounded by others who are hacking and wheezing. Topic number 4. Experts are calling the way the FDA oversees device makers as flawed. I call it not flawed, but fraud. The agency has been hiding reports of adverse events for dozens of risky medical devices. and they're only saying anything at all now because they've been exposed by a shocking new report. I thought I'd heard it all when it comes to the feds, but this one takes the cake. The FDA has announced that it's concerned about the safety of just one of the types of devices that it's given a pass to. But what about all the others? It's time for the secrecy to end. And if we put enough pressure on them, those tight-lipped feds are going to sing like a bird. If you've ever used an office stapler, you know how frustrating it can be when it locks up and the staples get jammed inside. Now imagine that same malfunction happening to a surgeon in an operating room. Surgical staplers are meant to cut and seal tissue or vessels, but they can misfire. When they do, they can sever a vein or worse. You could bleed to death, or if you're lucky, you could just get sepsis or experience a recurrence of cancer. Hear about the risk ahead of time, and you could opt for an alternative procedure. But even your doctor might not know how bad the risk is. The FDA has granted medical device companies a special exemption. For the last 2 decades, the agency has allowed about 100 of them to skip reporting injuries and malfunctions on MAUD, the manufacturer and user facility device experience. Both doctors and patients rely on the information contained in this public database to make critical decisions regarding surgical procedures. Instead, those reports have been filed in a dark database that no one has access to. Medical device makers were only required to file incidents of patient deaths in MAUD. Anything else bad that happened was conveniently hidden from public view thanks to this alternative reporting. But now, a Kaiser Health News investigation has blown the lid off the whole sham, and the feds are finally owning up to the fact that such reporting exception programs exist, and that thousands of instances of malfunctions or harm occurred amidst this information blackout. The paltry amount of information that had been divulged to the public constitutes just about 1/1000th% the total amount of harm that's been done by these devices. More than 32,000 malfunctions and more than 9,000 serious injuries from surgical staplers were secretly reported in just 7 years. The scariest part is that any device manufacturer can request an exemption from its reporting requirements, and you'll be none the wiser. It's as though the FDA has just given away any authority it has over the device industry, and the companies reaping the biggest benefits are those that make the most controversial and riskiest devices. It's not just staplers and their staples, but also pelvic mesh, surgical robots, heart valves, stents, and pacemakers. You could submit a Freedom of Information Act request to learn about past incidents, but it could take up to 2 years to get a response. If you're looking at going under the knife, you may not have the luxury of waiting the next 2 years. We now know that some of the risk in surgical staplers comes from operator error. So ask your doctor if a stapler will be used, who will be using it, and whether they've been fully trained to use it. But don't let the FDA or device makers off the hook that easy. When the agency issues a new draft guidance for the manufacturers of surgical staplers and staples for internal use later this year, you'll have the chance to comment as a member of the public. Topic number 5. When your kidneys fail, you've got two options. Rely on dialysis to filter toxins out of your blood. Wait for an organ transplant. Talk about being between a rock and a hard place. Because you might die waiting for a new kidney. That's a match. And you might die after being hooked up to a dialysis machine. Your doctor tells you your kidneys won't function without dialysis and that it'll help you live a little longer. But 1 in 4 Americans who start dialysis will lose their life within a year. Do you know that? In fact, America has one of the highest mortality rates for dialysis care in the first world. Why? Dialysis, which is supposed to be a last resort, has become a cash cow for profit dialysis centers. Over 300 people go on dialysis for kidney failure every day, and they're keeping a very dark and nasty secret from you and the people you love. But I'm here to blow the lid off this risky scam. Dialysis centers have become such a big business that research shows clinics are grossly understaffed and technicians and nurses are dangerously overworked. Yet the dialysis industry forked over nearly $111 million in 2018 election to oppose a California ballot measure that would have capped its profits and forced the money to go to improving patient care. That's a record-breaking spend, beating out Big Pharma, which shelled out $109 million in 2016 to keep drug prices from being capped. And it worked. The propaganda convinced voters to defeat the proposition for fear of less and worse care. And the very next day, stocks for the opposing campaign's top contributor, the private dialysis center chain DaVita, went up nearly 11%. But while profits have skyrocketed, treatment seems to have gotten worse. State inspection records show safety violations that range from not washing hands or wearing gloves to not disinfecting tubing correctly and improperly handling blood lines. Cross-contamination is commonplace. And that's just California. Companies like DaVita operate dialysis factories across the country. This year alone, DaVita has been ordered to pay out nearly $400 million to the families of dialysis patients in 3 wrongful death suits. The corporation agreed to $270 million settlement over inflating insurance claims to Medicare and $895 million over its claims it fraudulently threw out dialysis drugs to inflate the government claims. That's a lot of money to you and me. Settlement that huge could even take down a smaller company. But it's a bargain to DaVita, which raked in $10.1 billion in dialysis revenue last year. The Denver-based company controls about a third of the dialysis market. Thank the Lord it's not your only option. Here's how to choose the care that will save your life, not risking ending it. Number 1, visit the Medicare's Dialysis Facility Compare website for the information on dialysis providers' frequency of patient death, hospitalization, hospital readmission, bloodstream infections, and blood transfusions. You want the lowest numbers possible for all those factors. Number 2, inspect the facility before you start treatment. If you see blood or urine on the floor or chairs or any other unsanitary condition, turn around and never look back. Number 3, look for the use of antimicrobial barrier caps on the catheters. Number 4, beware of any pre-existing conditions that may make drugs like Granuflow, blood thinners, and clot busters too risky to use. And don't let your technician or anyone else at your clinic convince you to drop your Medicare coverage and sign up for private insurance instead. Profiteering dialysis firms make more money off private insurance reimbursements. Instead of switching insurance, consider switching your dialysis care. And now let's move on to testimonials. Dr. Harry, I've been taking CardioForLIfe for almost a year, and all I can say is thank you. Since I've got out from the infamous warfarin and started taking CardioForLIfe, my heart has been transformed to a better one, and my constant headaches disappeared. What a relief. No more dizzy spells, no more black and blue in my legs and arms. For all these great changes in my health, I am indebted to you and your product. Thanks for that, Miriam. Testimony number 2, Dr. Harry, I've been on CardioForLIfe for over 6 months now. Although my blood pressure was not too high to begin with, I have noticed it getting lower, so much so that I have been able to cut out one high blood pressure medication altogether and reduce the other one from 20 milligrams down to 10 milligrams per day. Additionally, my AFib has been less bothersome with the slower heart rate since beginning the supplement. I imagine myself off all these meds once I resume my full physical exercise routine. Also, I use Dr. Harry's Man Up, clever name when you think about it, not only for testosterone booster, I'm 72 years old, but also for the dopamine boost that one of the ingredients, L-tyrosine, provides. Finally, I've been on the Flex Joint Health product for over 6 months now, which has supported my recovery from a 2.5-year sedentary lifestyle because of muscle atrophy. So my hip structure was doing the work due to muscle loss. Now I can walk my dog again without wincing at every moment. Pretty impressive result for this man. These products are not contraindicated for me, and my primary care doctor is somewhat puzzled that I'm getting better without her prescribing medications that are not good for me in the long run. She shakes her head a lot when I'm in her office. She is happy for me, but puzzled. Mainstream physicians need to know when products like these resolve medical issues for their patients. It is the only way I could think of to actually transform our healthcare system in a manner that makes a difference for everyone. After all, isn't it all about feeling better and living longer without pain and discomfort and the fears and anxieties that go with it? Thank you, Dr. Harry, for your courage to go up against the big guys. Keep up the good work. Well, thanks for that, Luke. And finally, testimony number 3. Dr. Harry, I want to let you know how amazing the cleanse is working for my wife. We are having a regular 2 to 3 bowel movements per day. It has helped me tremendously in that ever since I went through chemo, I would go between being constipated or having diarrhea. Since starting on the cleanse, I have not had any problems. Thanks for everything, Dan. Well, that concludes our top 5 to stay alive for June 2020. Stay safe, keep wearing your mask, but get outside, dance in the street. It's summertime, people. Enjoy the sun. That vitamin D is great for you. Breathe that air with all the pollen in it, but enjoy life. And this is Dr. Harry saying, God bless you all. We'll see you next time. Good day.